Konnichiwa guys! It has been forever since I've done a video and I'm sorry. Really, I just haven't had anything to do videos about. I've been doing my own studies and being lazy too. So I just haven't done a video, but today's video was actually a request from one of my subscribers. His name is Treeborn Child. He's an awesome dude. And he picked a very good topic, which is the te form. The te form you guys come across, I guess, maybe a little ways into your Japanese studies, a little ways after learning your like verb conjugations, like your basics, like your present and your past tense. Te form ends up being one of those things that you start learning like right after that. Um, so I'm just gonna basically start because I don't want it to be a super long video. Um, we have to talk about conjugations for te form. I know you guys are probably like, oh, not more conjugations. It's not that hard with the conjugating for te form. If you already learned the past tense, which is the ta form basically, if you've already learned that form, then you already know how to conjugate to te form because you basically, instead of conjugating to ta, you conjugate to te, and the rules are the same. But for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, don't know how to conjugate to the ta or the te form, basically, it's simple. For your class 2 verbs, which means your iru and your eru ending verbs, it's very easy to conjugate to ta and te form. You basically drop the ru and add ta or te. So, for example, taberu becomes tabete or tabita, which tabita means you ate. And that's the casual form of saying. I know you probably go, no, it's tabimashita. And that's true, but in the casual form, the past tense is ta. But we'll just stick with te so you guys don't get confused. And then, for example, if we have miru, miru becomes mite, okay? Now, for class 1 verbs, it does get a little tricky because you have to pay attention to the ending of each verb because each verb ending has a different sound. So I'll go over the groupings for that, and the sounds that I give you are the verb or the sound basically that you're going to drop off and then add the te ending. And the te endings aren't just te; they get a little complicated. So I'll just go over them really quickly, then I'll explain them later. Okay, so if your verb ends with a u, su, or ru, it becomes te. Notice I moved my mouth but made no sound because this is actually going to be the double T E. Okay, so T T E. And we know in Japanese, those double consonants, there's a pause. So, te. I know I look retarded saying it. Anyways, if your verb ends with mu, bu, or nu, it becomes nde. If your verb ends with su, it becomes shite. If it ends in ku, it becomes ite. If it ends in gu, it becomes ide. And then you have your exceptions. The last 3 are exceptions. You have suru, which also conjugates to shite. Kuru conjugates to kite. And iku, as in to go somewhere, becomes ite. Okay, and there is a pause there. All right, so these are for the class 1 verbs. So I put the little chart on the bottom. I'll try to put the little chart on the bottom so that you can see each one. But we'll go over an example of a verb ending with each of those sounds so you can see how it conjugates. So our first one was a U sound. So kau. Kau becomes kate. Okay, pause. Kate, which means to buy. Su, we have matsu. So matsu becomes mate. And I'm pretty sure you guys have heard that one. It means wait. If you watched any animes, they always usually have some little kid or somebody who's getting left behind and they're all, mite, mite. Okay, so that's what that means. So you've heard that one. Ru, ending verb, we have toru, which becomes tote, okay, which means to take. A mu ending verb would be yomu, which not translates, but conjugates into yonde, which means to read. I also chose a verb for bu that actually conjugates the same way, which is yobu, which is to call. and it also conjugates into yonde. And this, I only did this because I really wanted to point out why learning kanji in Japanese is so important. Because you can have these verbs that, okay, well, yo mu and yo bu, one is read, one is call. And unless you saw the kanji, you wouldn't really necessarily know what it was just on its own, unless it had the translation next to it. So that's why this only learning Japanese using romaji can sometimes be a little tricky, but whatever. Usually you can tell by the context of the sentence or the conversation which yonde is being referred to. Okay? So it's not that big of a deal, but I just wanted to point that out, that there are going to be some verbs out there that conjugate and look exactly the same once you get it into its te form. Okay? All right. So the next one is new ending verbs, which is shinu, I chose, which becomes shinde, which means to die. And I think new ending verbs are very slim. I don't think there's many out there. I think there's like, I don't even know, but they're very few. And this is one of the ones that you'll learn. So I don't really think you're going to come across too many verbs that end in new. So if you can remember this one, shinu, shinde, you're good. A suining verb, we have hanasu, okay, which becomes hanashite, which means to speak. And then you have ku. I chose kiku for the verb, and it becomes kite, which means to listen, okay? Then our last one is a gu ending verb. I chose oyogu, which becomes oyoide, which is to swim. Okay? So that's the examples of what I'm telling you when I say if they end with that sound, that is the sound on the verb that you drop off, and then you add this random te sound because they all have different ones. It's kind of weird. So the class one verbs are the only ones that really are difficult when it comes to conjugating, okay? Now, let's talk about the usages. I think the first usage with the te form that you learn is actually command form, when you're asking someone or telling someone to do something. So when you're using command form, basically you take the te form of the verb and follow it with kudasai, okay? So I chose mate. We've already heard this one already. So mate kudasai. Wait, please. Simple. Now I know I already gave you the example of how in anime they just say mate, mate. Yeah, okay, you can use it without the kudasai. It's just that sometimes that can be considered rude. But I guess if you're just among friends and you're just like in a panic and you're like, oh, mate, stop, don't go anywhere. Then it's fine. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be like, oh, why are you being rude? You didn't even say wait, please. You know, we do it in English. We don't always say wait, please. We just say wait, and same difference. So don't get too hung up on the politeness of these forms. I also wanted to give you a full sentence using this kind of usage for te form. So I don't know if you guys have ever had in your little textbooks, whatever you're using, or ever seen the example sentences where they're like, oh, okay, you're walking into a bank and you're gonna, get an account because you just moved to Japan. Those kind of little scenarios. So I know one of those sentences you've probably seen would be namae to jusho kaite kudasai, which means please write your name and address. Okay, so you put namae to jusho, which is name and address, and then the o being the particle that indicates what is being acted on by the verb. Kaite means to write, and then kudasai, please. Okay, so very simple, asking someone to do something politely. That's probably the easiest way to use te form, I think. The next one would be the progressive form, or what we would call in English the ing form. I know you guys have come across this. I know that my textbook personally does not really go into it. It goes, oh, te form can be used as an ing like in English. And that's it. And you're all, thank you. Thank you for that enlightening explanation. But to go further into that, basically with this form, you use the te form of the verb and you follow the verb with iru or imasu, Okay, of course, I'm giving you the casual and the polite way. Or you can end it with nai or imasen, which means not. Okay, so you have that. So you can say, I am doing something, I'm not doing something, whatever you're trying to say. That's how you basically add the ing on. You have to have iru. I don't know if you can hear my dryer. That was my dryer. I'm not doing laundry, but someone else in the house is. Sorry for that. But anyways, so if you want to add that ing, you take the te form, add iru, imas, inai, imasen. Okay, so for example, you could say, ima bangohan o tabiteimasu. So you would be saying basically, right now I'm eating dinner. I'm not. If you want to say you're not eating dinner, then you used to say bangohan o tabite inai or imasen. Okay, so very simple using these. You just take the te form, add the iru or the imas. And I know you're probably going, but wait a minute, what if I'm not talking about an animated or inanimate object, whatever. In this case, when you're using te form, iru can be used for both inanimate and animate objects. So don't worry about it here. I know in the beginning of your studies, they really drill iru and aru, like, no, this one's for that, this one's for this. You can't use this one for animated objects, you can't use this one for inanimated objects. It doesn't matter in this case. In this case, you use it for both. Okay. Another one I wanted to point out too is when it comes to using nouns as verbs. If you haven't gone through that, where you add suru, to do, onto the end of a noun, which turns it into a verb. Like for instance, like in English, if you're kind of thinking like we don't have that in English, we do. We have words that are verbs and nouns. So like the word work. Work can mean the place that you work at, or you can actually be working. So if you're saying I'm going to work, work is not a verb in that sense. It's a noun. But if you're saying I'm working on whatever it is you're working on, then in that sentence it is a verb. Okay? So if you're doing something like that, you have to add suru to the noun, but the suru is the part that becomes the te. So that's why I was telling you in the little chart we had suru, and suru in its te form is just shite. So for example sentence, you would have Nihongo benkyou shiteimasu, which is I'm studying Japanese right now. Okay, all right. Right now. I didn't really literally say right now in Japanese, but Nihongo benkyou shiteimasu means I'm studying Japanese. This form can also be used if you're doing something for a long period of time. Like say you're telling someone that you're teaching somewhere. Say you're a teacher. Say you're a jet. Okay, and you're over in Japan teaching English to Japanese students. You could then say Nihon no koko de eigo oshiete imasu, which means I'm teaching English at a Japanese school. Okay, or at a school in Japan. So it's kind of just like that, like, oh, like somebody asks you, oh, where are you working right now? Oh, I'm working at McDonald's. Whatever. I hope you're not working at McDonald's. If you are, that's still fine. But it's kind of used in that way. The sentence structure is the same. There's nothing changed. You add the emas on the end, but you can use it in those situations. The other one I wanted to go over is when you're using like two verbs in a sentence, or more than two verbs in a sentence. Basically what happens if you have multiple verbs in a sentence, say you're like, oh, well, I did this and then I did that. The first verbs or the verbs before the last verb will be conjugated into their te form. The last verb, however, will be conjugated into the tense that it needs to be conjugated into and the politeness. And that marks the politeness for the whole sentence and the tense for the whole sentence. So, for example, Kino Tokyo ni ite ramen o tabimashita. I just said, yesterday I went to Tokyo and ate ramen. Okay, so you see I did ite, that was in the te form, but tabimashita, I didn't say tabite, and then imashita. I said tabimashita. Sorry, I'm getting all my mas and tabimes and all mixed up. So that's how you would conjugate it. The last verb basically shows the tense, which was past tense. Yesterday, I went to Tokyo and ate ramen. If you wanted to be casual, instead of using tabimashita, which is the polite, you can just say tabita. And then tabita would make the whole sentence casual and would make it past tense. Okay? So that's how you would do it. So even if you said I went to Tokyo, I did this and this and this and this, then all those verbs beforehand would all be te, and then the last verb would be whatever tense you wanted in and whatever politeness you wanted in. So that's pretty easy. And then the last one, which was actually specifically asked for by Treeborn Child, he asked me that he had come across the forbidden form of using te. And when he actually asked me to go over that, I was kind of like, because I remember when I first saw it, I was like totally thrown off on how to use this usage of the te form. I don't like calling it the forbidden form because in English, forbidden is really intense. Like it's kind of like this is when you're telling people that they can never, ever, 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 ever do something. Sorry, I had to get black for just like a second. But I like to call it the must not do or do not do usage or form of te. Basically, you take the verb, you conjugate it into te form, and then you follow it with wa and ikenai. Okay, and I know you might be saying ikenai, ikemasen. Doesn't that mean, like, isn't that the negative form of go? And it is. But let me explain that first, because this is the thing that threw me off with this form, because I was like, what? I don't get it. Why are they saying not to go? I talked to a few of my Japanese friends and I tried to get them to explain this to me. And one of my friends actually explained it in a way that made perfect sense to me. I don't know if it'll make sense to you. But he was just saying, like, if you've ever played the game Jenga, I'm pretty sure we've all played Jenga, you know, the thing with the bricks and you're trying to like take the little pieces out so it doesn't fall over. But he was explaining to me, he's like, it's kind of like, you know, when you're sitting there and you're trying to take your piece out and all your friends are shouting to you, go, go, go. You could also say, do it, do it, do it. So in Japan, I guess go and to do are interchangeable, but only in this sense in the te form. So it literally translates to do not do, and not go, even though that is where it's coming from. And I'm pretty sure that may not be the exact explanation for it, but that's how he explained it to me, and it makes sense, so I'm going with it. Okay? But basically, this is just, you're using this form just to tell somebody not to do something. So the basic, I think the most basic sentence that I think we can all relate to is when you tell someone not to forget something. You're not forbidding them to forget, but you're telling, hey, don't forget, you know, what I told you, or don't forget that we have to go so-and-so, go somewhere later on. So the basic sentence for that would be, wasurete wa ikenai or ikimasen, if you're trying to be casual polite. So, wasurete wa ikimasen. Okay? Meaning, don't forget. That's all it means. It's very easy to use this form. You can tell somebody not to forget something. If you're telling someone not to forget something, then you put the object that you're asking them not to forget, the particle wo, and then follow it with like wasurete wa ikimasen. So you could say like, don't forget like the tickets. Say you're going to a concert and you're telling someone, don't forget the tickets. It would be chiketo wasurete wa ikimasen. Don't forget the tickets. Okay, so very simple. That is the forbidden form. But just think of it as telling someone not to do something or telling them you must not do that. So I'm pretty sure this is what you would hear like a parent telling their child, like, don't do that, stop it. You know, or you hear a teacher telling the class, everyone stop talking, or something like that. Sorry I don't have a bunch of example sentences, but that's all I have for you today. I hope that helps you guys out. If anything was unclear, please comment in the bottom down there in the little comment section. And if you guys do want a video request, message me on YouTube and I will make a video like I did today. So, hope you guys had a Merry Christmas and I hope your new year is going awesome. Mine is. I love it. I'm enjoying these first 2 days of the new year. So, ciao mate.